This is the third movie for Access Chapter 2, the Prepare PUTS 1.0. We are on step 17. I have the instruction / rubric on the left. I have the database open on the right. So this first step, step number 17, has us looking at the instructions on page, it's page 118. And to 119. Open the table, corporate table in Design View. So I'm going to open up my navigation pane, Table Corporate, Design View, insert a new field above company name. So the way that I can put a field above is I select where I want it to go above. So I'm going to click on, not on company name, but the row indicator of company name, right click, insert row. It's going to insert the row above it in Design View. And we're going to call this one Corporate ID. It's going to be an auto number, so I'm going to type an an A for auto number. And what an auto number is, it's a numeric field. It's an integer, meaning it's a whole number, and it just counts up. Every record gets the next number, 1, 2, 3. So it will just present whatever the next number is when you add a new record. So it makes each record unique. If I were to delete a row, a record, let's say corporate ID 5, 5 would never be used again. 5 is gone forever. So it's a really good way to make to identify a specific row or record when you don't have anything inherent for that. So we're going to type in the description, unique corporate identifier, and we're done with this step 17. Step 18, designate the corporate ID field as the primary key. So that is on page 118. To do that, you select the field using the record selector. On the ribbon, find primary key and click on it. You're going to now have this identifier that the corporate ID is the primary key. Remember, I mentioned this last week in class. There's 4 things that a primary key needs to have. 1, it needs to be unique. So no 2 records can have the same corporate ID. 2, it needs to be unchangeable, like it doesn't change. You don't shuffle what the corporate IDs are for the company. 3, it is not null, so you cannot leave that field empty, so you must have that data for every record. And then the 4th thing is that it's the smallest meaningful combination of fields to make a primary key. And this has to do, we'll skip that for now. So in this case, it is smallest because it's just one field. But there are times where you have to do a combination of fields to make the primary key. In this case, we don't. So we have step 18 done once we save this and then close it. So now table corporate now has a primary key. So the next thing that we're going to do is to talk about relationships. And the chapter goes through quite a bit of information about what a relationship is. This actually, the steps are on 124, 125, but there's a lot of material before that. So what a relationship does is connects 2 tables together based on a common piece of information. So we know that the corporate ID is the primary key in the corporate table. So if I used corporate ID in another field, in another table as a field, that corporate ID would not be the primary key unless you would only have one. But more than likely, you would have many occurrences of the corporate ID. So the relationship between those two tables is based on that common field. A primary key that exists in one table that is used in a second table as the connector, in that other table it's called the foreign key. So let's walk through this. We're going to come up here to Database Tools and find the relationships. So there are some relationships already defined. So between the item table and the item order table, do you see that item ID is repeated? So in this table, the item table, it's the primary key. That means that item can only exist one time. Item 1, item 2, in here one time. But in the order line table, that item ID could appear many times because you'd want somebody to be able to buy that more than once, right? Or use that more than once. So notice there's no key in front of it. So this is what's called the foreign key because it connects back to a primary key. Notice the 1 and infinity. That means it's a one-to-many relationship with referential integrity established. And what referential integrity does is say, I can't put something in the many or what's known as the child table if the corresponding record does not exist in the item table. So I can't order an item that doesn't exist in the item table. That just makes sense, right? If we look over here, the relationship between table order and the order line is also a one-to-many based on the order ID. But notice in the order line, it takes two fields in combination to make a record unique. Because you could have more than one line item, like more than one item ordered in an order. So even though there's only one order, you could have multiple lines. But if we look at the order plus the line number together, that makes a record unique. One-to-many referential integrity is established. And I know that because even though the lines could be there, if I did not have referential integrity, I wouldn't see the 1 and the infinity. So one order could have many line items on it, each lines. Okay, so we want to add the table participant table to the window. So I'm going to come up here and say add table, and I'm going to find table participants and double click. So if we look at, I'm going to close this add table right now, and I'm going to move that participant table over here, and let's look at this, right? So nothing in the participant is found in the order table, right? But if we look at the fields in the order table, participant ID, which is a duplicate of this field, which is the primary key in the participants table, exists. So I know that this is the connector. So I could see what a participant has ordered. Without that, I would never be able to go back and forth and see who's ordered what was ordered by somebody. So we're going to create a relationship between these. So on participants, I'm going to click, hold, and you get that little not symbol. Just keep going. Just have a little faith. We're going to keep going, and we're going to point to participant ID in the table order. I'm going to let go. So this is kind of this relationship window is where you can validate that you did it right. So both of these should say participant ID. Participants table, table order. I want to enforce referential integrity. It's a one-to-many. One participant could have many orders. We're going to create, and now I have my own line, right? If you ever want to go back and edit, you can just double click on that line. So let me take that away just to show you. So here's my line, but look, the 1 and the infinity symbol are gone. That tells me I did not enforce referential integrity. So we really want that. So we're done with this. After we save and close the relationship window. So now we're going to create, you know what, actually I'm going to stop and because I won't be able to get through all this, and we're already at 10 minutes. So I'm going to stop at step 19, and we'll pick up at step 20 in the next movie. All right, thank you.